Hello everyone, before this video starts, I would appreciate if you guys would leave a like and subscribe, since your support means the world to me and allows me to make these types of videos. Now let's get into the video. Leaving home was pretty rough on its own, to say nothing of the grief my family put me through. I told them that I was going to college a couple weeks in advance of the move-in date. I sort of had to. My boyfriend's disappearance had thrown my mother into a frenzy. I didn't tell anyone what I saw in the woods. I told Tyler about the Schulikun, but not about Krampus. He thinks it'll be fine in the end. The campground isn't open during the Christmas season after all, because no one wants to camp in the snow. He's only got his staff to worry about, and he doesn't think the Schulikun will actually be drowning anyone. They didn't carry through with their threat after all. They might have free run of the campground now, but that puts them under the jurisdiction of the lady, and Kate had enough bad run-ins with the Schulikun while she was human that he doesn't think she'll let them get away with much. He doesn't think anything that the lake could attract could get away with much. There's an ancient in charge of the campground now, after all. I hope he's right. Lakes are dangerous, and Kate probably isn't going to be happy to have to deal with that. She really can't catch a break, can she? Either as a human or as an ancient. But that's not my problem. No, my problem was my family being shitty to me. I blurted it out one evening when Mom was in a frenzy about what I was going to do about my future if my ex-boyfriend didn't come back. So I was like, hey, I do have a plan. I'm going to college. You don't need to keep freaking out about me. Oof, big mistake. My mom was upset, but she was worried, and that's not quite the same as being mean. It still sucked to deal with. I was already nervous enough about uprooting my whole life, and having to reassure my mom on top of it, instead of the other way around, was kind of a lot. I suppose she's afraid I'll go away and not come back like Dad did, and that's traumatizing. But Yano, I lost my dad. It's not like I don't have my own issues about that. It's not like I'm not scared to leave. So yeah, we were both upset and stressed, and naturally that led to some fights. I feel I could have handled it if that was all, though. But then my older sister decided to get involved. She still comes around the house a bit, usually when she's bored at home by herself while her husband is at work. She was convinced that my boyfriend's sudden disappearance was my fault, like I'd driven him off or something by being too clingy or not clingy enough. I wasn't helping at Mom's junk store because I wasn't getting along with her, and the campground was closed for the season, so that meant I was home a lot, watching over the younger siblings during winter break. And unfortunately, that meant I was around my older sister far more than I'd like. It was just this constant shitty nagging at me. Where did I think he went? What was the last thing I said to him? Was I trying to pressure him into marriage? Boys don't like to be pressured. And then I said he's not a boy. He's a man. We're both 18, and talking back was clearly the wrong thing to do. Honestly, I think she's unhappy in her own marriage, and is either projecting or is trying to force me into the same miserable choices she made so she has company. Joke's on her. My ex-boyfriend is dead. My younger siblings tend to parrot whatever she does as well. So it's been weeks of nothing but pick on Ashley. And when I finally shut down and stopped responding, it turned into, oh well, now Ashley is too good for us because she's leaving. I think I understand why Kate didn't get along with her extended family. This town fucking sucks sometimes. Anyway, by the time move-in weekend rolled around, it had gotten so bad that I didn't even have a ride to school. I'd figured out how to apply to school on my own so I could figure out how to get there myself as well. My mother's shitty excuse and possibly a last-ditch attempt to keep me safe at home. And my older sister told me that I didn't deserve her help because I wasn't properly grateful for the things I had here, which for the record was a boyfriend that hit me. Obviously, I don't have a car. I called Tyler in tears, and his wife, who is an absolute saint, volunteered to take me. And then she shows up to pick me up, and when I go to put my bags in the trunk, I find there's a care package assembled by the campground staff. Like there was food, shower sandals, which I didn't even know was a thing you needed, a bathrobe, a cute throw pillow that someone made, an electric kettle, microwave popcorn, and even a bottle of moonshine. Yes, I am underage, and yes, that is 100% not allowed in the dorms. Sometimes this town fucking sucks, and sometimes it's the best place full of the best people. Move-in was pretty crazy. Everyone was coming back from winter break, and while it wasn't as bad as fall semester move-in, according to Tyler's wife, it was still a lot of cars and a lot of people. Tyler's wife helped with the whole thing, I sort of just followed her lead the whole time. She checked in at the dorm front desk for me and got my dorm assignment and helped me bring my stuff upstairs. My roommate had moved in during the fall semester and her things were already neatly distributed in the room. There were 2 loft beds and she had a futon, a mini fridge, and a microwave positioned underneath them. Tyler's wife helped me put my things away and pretended not to see me stashing the moonshine in my underwear drawer. Then she went with me to meet with my advisor and didn't bother to correct anyone when they called her my mom. See? She's a saint. I don't know what I would have done without her. Been stuck in that crummy town, sitting in the deep woods sobbing on Bo's shoulder, I suppose. I haven't picked a major yet. I honestly have no idea what I want to do. My first semester is crammed full of general electives instead. I did abysmally on my math placement exam, and I've got at least 2 semesters worth of catch-up before I'm on par with the students coming from fancy high schools with AP classes. Then Tyler's wife insisted we take a self-guided tour of campus so that I'd know where my classes were. The student orientation for the spring semester newcomers was the next day, but Tyler's wife doubted it'd cover much more than where a couple key buildings were. I was completely overwhelmed by that point, so I thought that yes, a walk around campus would be nice. It's nothing like home. I noticed that on the drive over. The soft hills and forests gave way to flat plains covered with fields of corn and soybeans. I've never seen so much sky at once in my life. I felt incredibly small, like the sky was a vast and ancient god staring down at the little ants scurrying far below. At least the campus had buildings and trees to break the oppressive monotony, though they did nothing to relieve the wind. If anything, they condensed it, so that it came roaring between the buildings like an oncoming train. It was bitterly cold, and it wasn't long before I couldn't feel my nose. I forgot about the cold when we reached the northern part of campus. Instead of a lovely green stretch with trees and landscaping or more buildings, there was a cemetery, an actual cemetery with headstones and faded fake flowers and an iron fence encasing it. "This is different," Tyler's wife finally said. "I guess the university just built up around it over time." "I'm not sure I want to go here anymore," I said. "Not every place is like the campground. My university was perfectly normal. No one died while I was there." "That you knew of," I replied pointedly. She didn't have a response to that. "Still," she said cheerfully, "just because there's a graveyard here doesn't mean there's anything unnatural going on. This might not be on old land." The wind picked up, rattling the branches and shaking the artificial flowers decorating the headstones. "Sure," I said, unconvinced. "How about I just stay away from this part of campus after dark?" "Yeah, that'd probably be smart." "Excuse me," a voice said from behind us. "Are you new here?" We both turned. A short young man stood behind us, smirking with obvious glee at our consternation at finding a cemetery in the middle of campus. "Yeah," I said. "This is my move-in day." "So you haven't had orientation yet?" "Well, they'll tell you about it tomorrow. It's not that exciting, though. The campus just sort of swallowed this area up, and they didn't want to move all the bodies somewhere else. Sometimes they'll be holding a burial while you're walking to class. That's always awkward." "So it's actively being used still?" Tyler's wife asked. "It was," the student explained. "It wasn't anywhere near full, and the campus only bordered 3 sides of the cemetery anyway, and so it'd likely be in use for years to come, as they could always expand. The student medical center was on one end and the math department on the other, so there were a lot of jokes about that, but otherwise it wasn't that big of a deal. Now the rain, on the other hand." "Pardon?" I asked in that polite way that still left no room for doubt that I would have an explanation. The student glanced thoughtfully at the sky. It had been overcast all day, but I hadn't bothered to check the forecast to see if it was going to storm or not. "They'll tell you about it at orientation," he said reluctantly, "but I suppose I should go ahead and spoil some of the fun, just in case it rains tonight." "It's 20 degrees out," Tyler's wife said. "Yeah, we're going to get a warm snap. It'll jump to above freezing in a few hours. It's just something that happens around here." Which is weird, right? Like, I think that's weird. But I don't know, maybe it is normal for this area. I am going to an out-of-state college after all. I don't really know what things are like around here. "There's only one thing you need to know about this university," he continued. "No one goes outside when it rains. for any reason whatsoever. That can't be true, I said flatly. How do you attend classes if you don't go outside when it's raining? Professors will cancel class. Well, most of them will. Ask your dorm floor for an invite to the university Discord. We'll get you a list of the ones that don't. And what happens to those that do go out in the rain? Oh, you'll hear the stories. There's lots of them. He winked at me and then walked away. Tyler's wife and I watched him go in dismay, or at least I was dismayed. Tyler's wife continued to try and find the silver lining. She was really working to make my first day on campus special. Schools always have these silly legends, she said cheerfully. My school believed that if you didn't kiss the toe of the founder's statue on the way to your final exams, you'd fail. Gross. And yet the statue's toe was still shiny and polished. I wish that was it. I really do. I wish I'd gone back to my dorm room and met my roommate and nothing else happened. My roommate, at least I'm used to sharing a small space with other people. I grew up in a big family after all. Otherwise, I'm not sure how I do this whole sharing a small space with a total stranger thing. Not that there's anything wrong with Cassie. She's all right. Comes from some white picket fence kind of suburb with good schools and parents that are helping pay for her tuition. I mean, she's not rich if that's what you're thinking. Middle class, or at least what the middle class is supposed to be. This is not a prestigious private school after all. It's an obscure state college and she's in state, unlike me. It's a practical choice. I think we're both a lot alike in that regard. Maybe we come from wildly different backgrounds, but we both went with the sensible choices. I think we'll get along. She'd been here since the start of the fall semester. Her former roommate dropped out or something. Cassie wasn't sure since she'd never told her the reason. Just left during finals week, and when she got back from her classes, her roommate's side of the room was cleared out, and she hadn't heard from her since. They weren't really friends, Cassie said, so she wasn't particularly bothered by it. It happened. Yes, I texted Tyler's wife and asked her if it really was something that happened at college, and she texted me back that yes, it was, and to stop assuming the rest of the world was like the campground. But in my defense, the rest of the world is like the campground. Maybe, if you're unlucky, or live on old land. Cassie got me hooked up with the campus Discord invite. There's channels for each dorm and dorm floor, which is kind of cool. I don't know if it's normal for a university students to be this organized, and Discord wasn't around when Tyler's wife went to school, so she can't really tell me. I'm pretty glad they are, though, because when I joined, I was greeted with a pinned announcement in the general channel. Cassie had already gone to bed. I was too excited to sleep yet, so I was still up even though it was well past midnight. The computer screen was the only light in our dorm room as I stared at the message. It's supposed to rain tonight, it said. No one go outside. And as I finished reading it, the clouds broke and the rain slammed into the window of our dorm. It sounded like the impact of a fist and I jumped in my chair. In her loft bed, Cassie woke with a start. She stared at the window, her back to me, her hair a wispy mass floating across her shoulders. Ashley, she whispered. Yeah? Don't go outside, okay? She lay back down and pulled the covers up over her head. Her voice was muffled by the blanket. I stared out the window. Campus is a lot brighter than I'm used to. There aren't many streetlights where I'm from, just a couple on Main Street and some on the campground. They're everywhere on the university, though. Stately arches, aesthetically pleasing, lighting each and every walkway. Their warm glow made the rain shimmer like it was cut from glass. The wind transformed the rain into sheets, and it was like a glittering mirage, distorting the world outside my window. I didn't like it. It made me uneasy. Then I saw something approaching, a human figure running. I squinted, trying to make it out in the hazy mix of light and darkness. A woman, she was sprinting for the side entrance to the dormitory, running with panicked abandon. She wasn't trying to shield herself from the rain. She wasn't tucked over to protect her purse or her phone somewhere on her body. She looked desperate. Cassie, I hissed. Someone is out there. Go to bed, Ashley. I glanced over at my roommate's loft. She'd pulled her blankets up over her head. Then I looked back outside. The woman was at the door, frantically swiping her keycard. It took her 2 tries before the panel turned green, and she was able to yank the door open. I watched until it fell shut behind her, and she was out of sight, safely inside the building. and something hit the door behind her, hard enough that it shook in its frame. I saw the impact as a splatter of raindrops, like someone had thrown a water balloon and it exploded on impact. I stared intently at the rain in the darkness. My heart was pounding in my chest. I wanted to say I was just being silly, but I knew better than to dismiss what I saw. So I stared, searching for whatever had hit the door, and then it hit the window of my dorm room. A single blow with a crack like a rock hitting the glass. I stumbled backwards with a sharp gasp of surprise, my chest seizing up in a sudden panic. Nothing else happened, like whatever was out there saw me looking for it and decided to warn me off. "Cassie," I gasped, my voice a frightened croak. "What was that?" But Cassie stubbornly refused to answer this time. I nervously glanced out the window one more time, but nothing else happened. Just the rain hitting the pavement in sheets with each gust of the wind. Finally, reluctantly, I gathered up my bathroom caddy to go brush my teeth. It really was getting late, and I needed to sleep at some point. Besides, my hands were shaking, and I needed some sort of routine to calm my nerves, or I'd never get to sleep. I heard her, the woman fleeing the rain, on my way to the bathroom. She's someone on my floor. I heard her sobbing inside her dorm room. Our rooms are decently insulated, but I think she was right up against the door. I paused to listen in. I felt a little bit guilty, but I needed to know. It's okay," another voice was saying. Her roommate. "You're back. Nothing happened." It happened so fast," she gasped. "The sky just opened up." I know. And my boyfriend, he says someone on his floor heard the scratching. It's only our first day back. Their voices dwindled as they moved further into the dorm room. I hurried on before anyone caught me eavesdropping. "Cassie?" I asked once I was back in the room. She grunted to indicate she was still awake. "What happens if I go outside?" "Nothing," she said. "Nothing at all." I wish I could believe her, but considering how I grew up and listening to the rain slam against the window like it was trying to find a way in, I can't just ignore what I saw, especially since I saw one last thing after I had climbed into my loft. I looked out the window one more time, and from that angle, I could see something in the door that I hadn't been able to see before. Something that wasn't there when I'd used that door earlier in the day. A crack across the entire length of the glass pane. Castle orientation went great. Thank you for watching the video fully. Please hit the like and subscribe button, since I could not make these videos without your support, and it means the world to me.